Welcome to Redefining ABCD.
So, for today's Brown Art Network episode, me and Keerthi will be talking about cultural representation in kids' movies. It's such a big topic right now, especially in terms of, censorship and some parents not wanting to show, LGBT relationships on screen and that kind of stuff. So we thought it'd be kind of prevalent to talk about it in terms of LGBT community, but also in terms of social representation, cultural representation and some of the experiences that kids these days are allowed to experience in terms of culture. So, for the first question, Keerthi, can you talk us through a little bit about some of the cultural representation that we've been seeing on screen targeted towards kids nowadays?
Yeah, I think the game is changing. I'm going to be honest here. Like, what I'm seeing for like kids movies and even teens or like coming of age movies is very much different than what we have seen in our time as those individuals
Mm-hmm.
or young ones.
The
Um,
young'uns.
yes. Like, for example, Turning Red was something recently I watched, absolutely loved. It made my inner child very happy. Soul, Disney movies or Pixar movie, whatever it is, but Soul,
Mm-hmm.
was such a like a it's like it was inspiring. And there's so many other ones too. Like we were talking about this earlier. What other ones were there? Like
Encanto is a big one right now.
yes, Encanto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think that general overall the common theme we've seen from all the things that we kind of listed out were the more embracing like your identity and exposing kids to having those types of conversations earlier on, which I think is super important because we were not exposed to that and we're like now trying to figure that out. I feel like personally for me, and exposing kids this early on into like this type of representation can change the culture of how they outlook life later as adults, like when we are like now, and I can't imagine the possibilities that are like going to be there for like that generation of those kids um for when they're older. And so yeah, I think the general representation now, it's definitely changing and it's exciting that it's changing to be better and
Mm-hmm.
more inclusive. And yeah, I'm just happy right now with the way things are. I absolutely love children's movies. I still watch them now. As Sneha knows, like anytime an animation movie comes out, I am ready watching it on premiere day, on the all the streaming sites. So yeah, I think that's in terms of general representation, that's where I kind of see it right now.
That's fair. Honestly, I'm kind of on the same page. I think I
Hmm.
just like appreciate, at least in terms of culture, the way that they're introducing like worlds outside of the Western world. And it
Yes.
doesn't even have to be kind of like a quote unquote third world country or like underprivileged country. Like whatever.
Right,
It
right.
doesn't have to be like that. Like if you take Luca, for example, which is about a Italian community, right? And for me at least, I was like taken aback. I was like, look how much culture they're showing in this one like kids show. Like kids are being exposed to a world that isn't Western culture, that isn't America, that isn't Europe. Like it is Europe, but it's like Europe set in a very different time.
Hmm.
They're being exposed to things that I was definitely never exposed to. Just even through food, like tiny things.
Right,
Like
yeah.
for example, in Encanto is huge that there was an empanada that was like literally in the background on screen. An empanada. That's so cool. That's so great. That's not something that you see. If we go back like 10 years ago, that's not something you would see. Wish Dragon. The amount of, like they're not just showing the slums of East Asia or something like that. They're showing different ways of living within that culture. That's huge. That's crazy that
Yeah.
they're doing that now. And I think my biggest takeaway from all of these is like, okay, so where's India? Like, I wanted Encanto, but like the way that Encanto is made, the way that Luca is made, the way that these newer movies are being made, I want one for India. Like, when are we gonna see dosas and like idlis in the background? When are we
Right.
gonna see
Yeah.
like saris and like you know, people playing with like, you know, carom board or something on screen. Like I want that. I want to see that for children, and I'm excited to see where they take it, you know?
No, I definitely agree with that. Like you said, Encanto was such a powerful. It was powerful for the community. A few people who don't know, when Encanto came out, actually, because it represents Colombian culture,
Mhm.
people in Colombia rushed to see the movie, and people, not just kids, were so moved by how their culture was represented worldwide. Because everybody has pride in their background, right? And like you said, back in the day, a lot of times countries that are not first world nations like America or Europe was very much in, like, countries in Europe, it was very much portrayed on media being poor, and
Mhm.
like, if you come from this area, you're dirty, you're like, there's like this stereotypical image, and oftentimes you can't be prideful of that. Like, India is a
No.
great example. Slumdog Millionaire, what else, like the $1 Million Arm. And, like, yes, there are portions of of those countries that are like that type of way, but there was only that representation on the screen. And like you said, the common theme of what brought the pride in everybody, not just kids, to see like Encanto or Luca, um, it's just everyday life was portrayed as like, it was diverse.
Mhm.
Like you said, I want to see carom board playing like with the grandparents and grandkids, and like these small things like an empanada and getting them and eating them, or just like looking at how the dinner is beyond like the Eurocentric world. It's
Mhm.
so powerful, and I think that's where cultural representation needs to be. It shouldn't be forced down someone's throat. Like when you see an Indian character, they are fully like culture,
Done.
culture, culture, culture
Check.
on screen.
Yeah,
Yes, like
yeah.
let's move beyond that. When we mean cultural representation, I feel like it's the everyday life of how you go about, like, everybody goes about, for example, morning routine. Everybody goes about
Mhm.
that very differently, I'm sure. And I'm sure that culture affects the way that they do their morning routine. So things like that is what is reasons why people are so prideful in like the representation in children's movies, because I feel like Disney and other like studios capture that so well. And one thing I think that I thought was really powerful was Turning Red's director's first debut, the short
Mhm.
movie Bao, I think.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
tackled that, literally, me and my parents, we all watched that together, and like, I think after the short ended, it was just like, but all of us were just like in silence, sitting in silence, like we were like very much like, wow, because it tackles a lot of important topics in such a simple and beautiful way in like 7 minutes, like the
Mhm.
relationship between a parent and a child realizing that the parents grow old, like these types of really tough discussions and things that children have, like, are being discussed in such a really beautiful way. And oftentimes people think, oh, they're children, what do you know? But children think very intellectually, like, people don't give them credit. So the way that these movies now are representing like children is like, it's kind of portraying that as well. Like, children are a
Mhm.
lot more intellectual, like, let's give them credit, they are smart, don't undermine them. But yeah, that's a really long rant. I'm sorry, I went really
No,
long.
no, 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 no. You're absolutely like literally. I was thinking the same. Like you said, like thematically, not only like what is on screen and what is being portrayed and represented on screen, but like the stories themselves are being elevated right now in a way that's like they're talking about mental health issues. They're talking about generational trauma and how to overcome it. Albeit they're doing it with a lot of nuance and a lot of like romanticization and stuff, but they're doing it in a way that kids can understand through music, through colors, through like, you know, the animation. Like you can get away with a lot in animation as well, right? There's a lot of like little like jumps and things that you can't do in real life that you can do in animation, and they take
Right.
that for granted. And I know I'm just talking about animation right now because I'm kind of a nerd, but like in terms of like the things that you're capable of, like that's it's amazing that they can bring that to kids and make them understand like very like difficult conversations, like forgiving your grandparents. Forget like Encanto, at the end of Encanto, spoiler alert,
Yes.
like they eventually like she has to, you know, Mirabel has to forgive her grandparents. And I think that honestly has been a big theme. Isn't that also a theme of Turning Red, right? Like I haven't seen it yet, so no spoilers, but I think that's the ending, yeah? Like that's like kind of close to not just
I'll let you watch it. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's very much, yeah, it's very similar to Encanto, but in like a different perspective. But yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I don't know, it's really great to see that and like just like watch kids like view that and also have their own opinions about it.
Mhm.
It's just cool, like especially I guess like I mean if we want to compare it to the past, like I don't know if you wanted to like say anything about that. Like what do you think is like really different from the present and the past? Like the way that media was kind of shown to us. Like I mean I can think of some really shitty examples for the past. Um but I'll let you go first if you would like.
Okay. I think so. Like going back to your point of children's movie being romanticized, I feel like
Mhm.
that was something that you could kind of see in the past. I feel like the way that children's movies were romanticized for us was more of like, let's hide the fact, or let's not
Yeah.
talk about these really complex topics. Like, let's not get to the nitty gritty. But I feel
Yeah.
like now the romanticization, okay, I think personally, some level of romanticization of these heavy topics is necessary just because, like I kind of mentioned before in a previous episode, I feel like children should be children. Children
Mhm.
shouldn't have, if they shouldn't have to grow up too fast. Like childhood is such a beautiful thing if you're able to be happy and have good memories from it. And so we should be able to nurture that type of environment for kids. And I think that some level of romanticization is like it's needed. Um but like you should also be transparent and like I think allowing kids to be exposed to like those heavy topics will allow that like that there has to be a balance. And I feel like in the past there really necessarily wasn't. And I feel like in the past. I can't give specific examples. I'm going to be really honest. I'm just too much into the current. I can't
That's
really think
fair.
of anything
You're on
right
the
now.
high. You're on the high. You
um,
can't think of the bad ones. They're not in the dictionary anymore. They didn't happen.
yeah, yeah, but like but I like feel like what in the past. I feel like what was I going? Where was I going with this? I had something. Mm. Oh, I feel like in the past, a lot of the ways that topics were viewed on screen were um tailored to how the society or politics, like no one wanted to question the status quo back in the day as much. I feel like now you talk about like turning red, they talk about periods and what's like going growing up with periods. You I don't think we would be able to see stuff like that in our age. Like just talking about periods as adults apparently is uncomfortable for people. So like it's just like it's that I think that very much we didn't try to question the status quo, or no one it was not very like we weren't encouraged to kind of break that notion. I feel like, which I feel like nowadays you see that like let's question, why are we all thinking this one way, or why is society
Right.
acting like this way? Like for example, soul, what is the meaning of
Mm-hmm.
life? That's basically the question that they answer. And I don't think we would be able to see a movie like that back in our day. Like, what is the meaning of
No.
life being answered? But yeah, so that's I think that's just my take on it. And it's kind of like evolution. Like we've learned and figured out a way to do it right. And I think we're at that
Yeah,
stage. We're
yeah.
getting there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think it's called like I don't know. I forget what my point was. Fuck. No, there was a point. I'm grasping at straws now. Shoot. N- Shoot.
Say whatever you want. We can.
Fuck. Hang on, hang on, hang on. It was a good point though. It was a good point. I was gonna say like I think just at least for me when I was younger, it was also the fact that there was no one on screen that looked like me. So like there like you know there was like and even like in middle school, high school, like I feel like and this is gonna sound really pathetic and sad maybe, but I feel like I really like I wasn't that good in like social situations, right? Like and I could only learn through what other people were doing, or I could learn from, you know, like TV shows and movies and all this stuff. But like so like my for example, dating life, relationships, all that kind of stuff. Like I didn't know all that much. I had no mentors to help me with all this stuff. So I turned to movies and TV shows. But I'm watching all these movies and TV shows that have couples that don't look like me. So automatically I'm like, am I even capable of this, or am I like not, like growing up, like it's very confusing to decipher between the two, and then coming to terms with it and like overcoming that hurdle and being like, no, but you are capable of it, just put yourself out there, you got this, like. But it was something that I had to overcome just because there was no couples on screen that looked like me. And now, you're getting, as much as I hate to say it, never have I ever, and you're getting shows like, even like Big Mouth has so many, like, so much representation. Like, if you so I watched the spin-off of Big Mouth very recently, called Human Resources, and literally the main family that they're focusing on is Arabic. Like, they're Middle Eastern. And I was like, that's amazing. They're Middle Eastern American. And I was like, this is spectacular. And they're showing all three generations. And I was like, I wasn't expecting this representation to happen from Human Resources by Nick Kroll. But we're here. We're here, and I'm here for the representation. So even like tiny things like that, I just appreciate seeing that now and being like, wow, like, 10, even 5 years back, we grew up on Pretty Little Liars and right. Secret Life of, whatever, and Flash and all these like characters. You really love them, but they're not Indian, so you can't really like, you want to root
right.
for them, but
you're right.
Are rooting for them, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
It's like, yeah, you can't connect when you don't see someone like you on screen. I totally get that, and it made me think of the back in the day, that one I guess it's like it was one stereotype where the leading role was always white people, and the best friend to the leading role was always a person of color, oftentimes someone who's African American, and that kind of forced like
the black
change
best
you
friend.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, that was what I was wanting you to talk about. I was like, because like that perspective kind of affects people, because those were mainly teen movies. So in high school, like people, I'm sure that has molded people's view or way of how they approach their identity and how they can go about things, because they're most probably, like in most movies, those best friends are in the shadow of the lead character, and they're always not able to kind of dive into those problems like that the character's going through, because they're always just like serving the lead character. And so like those types of roles, or like what's kind of changing now, or those were the things that needed to be changed, because that does affect the way you approach life, because media is basically a portrayal of the real world, or the perspective of a real world coming from the director. So it's a very much like a lensed view on certain topics, and so that's why children's movies needs to be diverse, because we're taking multiple lenses and different perspectives so that people can kind of take their own opinions and make their own perspectives, which I felt was very much lacking back in the day. It felt very monolithic, like everything that was getting churned out. Like you said, Pretty Little Liars, the entire cast was white, blonde. They all wore heavy makeup, pink eyeliner, pink nails.
They were all like not 14 at all, not even close.
Right. Like
a lot of that happened too.
Twilight's another great example. Like that was what everybody what teen years did, like really liked. Or
I mean, Harry Potter.
Yeah,
oh my
like
God,
the Indian representation in that. Like even I remember seeing the Langas. It's like they didn't look like real Langas. Like it's things like that. Like
no, I was disappointed with the Langa. I remember when that came out. I remember not even when it came out, because I was too late for that. But when I like saw it for the first time, I was like, it's not what I was expecting. What is this? What are we watching?
Yeah, major disappointment vibes.
Also, there's only 2 Indians in all of Hogwarts. Bullshit. That's a lie. That's a lie. Anyways, I don't know. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think also just like the people behind the scenes also, and like the people that are making the movies and making the TV show. I mean, Crazy Rich Asians, all Asian cast. Black Panther, all black cast. Shang-Chi, all Asian cast. Like, that's starting to become a thing, and I'm really happy for that to be a thing, and I'm really excited to see where that will take us in the future, and see the creativity that is allowed to be enabled, and I was also thinking about it. I think filmmakers are also not shying away from showing languages anymore. Like they're not trying to explain. I don't know if you've seen West Side Story yet, but there's whole like conversations happening between two characters in Puerto Rican. Like they're not translating it at all. There's no subtitles. But just by the way that they're talking and the way that, you know, they switch back and forth between English and Puerto Rican, you can tell what they're saying. But I thought that was such a choice, right? Like, we're at a point where we can watch two characters speak a completely different language without subtitles and still understand what they're getting at. And that's like a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Like that's something that people have accepted as a thing. Also, I think with Parasite winning 3 years ago, I think what did Bong Joon-ho say? Something about subtitles how if only the American viewers,
like the 6 inches quote.
You've opened your eyes to a world of possibilities. I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're right. You're correct. And I think that's so great. People have access now, which is great. Big change.
It's like while racism is still there in the industry, it's like at least these types of representation is helping ease the people who are open to learning about new things and just didn't know what was actually out there, like have a chance to actually open that Pandora's box, like you said. Because it's not only that, like nowadays music is also transcending language, and like you said, like industries are crossing over too now. Like we've got people coming over from different areas of the world coming in, being in Hollywood movies, and it's definitely changing the game. And I think, like you said, I feel like children's movies are the start of that change. But so like moving on to the next topic, I think. So the next topic is like about what I was thinking we could talk about is like the parents' perspectives and how that affects the children's influence or their way of portrayal, like viewing these movies and kind of interpreting their own perspectives. And I think like Turning Red, for example, got a lot of pushback, primarily because it talked about periods. It talked about it was focused on a specific identity. That was the reason why a lot of white film critics were like, this is not relatable to the general public, when the director herself was saying this is not supposed to be relatable to the general public. It's supposed to be related to a younger version of her, which she was Chinese American, living up in Toronto and growing up and going through the phases of puberty. Like it's a very niche thing, and so there was a lot of pushback on that. So I guess what are your opinions on how parents' perspectives can affect the way that children are exposed to these types of movies and how it kind of affects like later in the adult life? Because there's like some stuff that like we'll talk about later, but like question. That's the question.
No, I got you. Well, so I think 20, 30 years back, before the internet, parents really, really easily could dictate what their kids can view and not view. And I think it's cute that they still think they have that power because now we have the internet.
Right.
So I feel like yes, there's a lot of pushback. But also kids are kids and they're going to find it anyways. Like you can put all the parental controls you want. They're going to find it. Like they're kids. And they get older, and they know how to surpass the parental controls, and they have friends, okay? So, like, I just don't... I understand where they're coming from in terms of, like, I want to protect my children from these topics until they're ready for them. But at the same time, like, I'm going to be quite honest. Like, no one gave me the sex talk. I just knew it because I would talk to friends, right? I know that's, like, maybe that's just a South Asian perspective. Like, most South Asian parents don't really talk about
sex
that kind
is
of
a
stuff.
stigmatized topic for multiple communities.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's really cute that people think they still have that power over their children. And it's kind of dumb because I feel like, I don't know, like, we're at a point where, like, we're just talking about human rights here, you know? We're just talking about people getting to enjoy and see themselves on screen and being able to feel represented. And if you feel like your kids are not open or are not allowed or ready for the topics that are being discussed, it's on you to stop them, but also, like, are you really going to? You know what I mean? Like, you can only do so much. So I don't know. Like I think it does affect. I think what a parent feels about certain things and about like what their kids can see and not see can affect the child. But I think like nowadays where the movie industry and the TV industry and like what kids are consuming is going towards, they're going to find that content that they're trying to hide anyways. So I think it's a moot point is what I'm trying to say. I don't know. Like
No,
they're gonna find it. They're gonna find it.
it's a good point. Like everything is so accessible by technology nowadays. So like yeah, it's inevitable that they're gonna figure it out. But I feel like it's not silence, censoring what a kid sees. That affects the development or what they view in the like long term. Like that's what we talk
Yeah.
about combating racism and sexism like as adults.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think about it, like all these people, it's not like they just one day woke up in they're 25, like I hate women. Like they just don't randomly come
Yeah,
to this like conclusion. It's it's like bred or nurtured at a
mm-hmm.
young age. Like they most probably they grew up in a traditional family, and in a traditional family they were taught women to have to be in the kitchen or like something like that, and so they just thought it was acceptable to think like that. And then having to change their perspective later in life is so much harder because everybody's stuck in their ways with pride and ego and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it, it's what they were exposed to as children. And so that's why children's movies are powerful. Representation is powerful, and that's why with parents censoring, yes, it might be inevitable. Some people, maybe if they don't have the resources to inevitably learn these types of things, it's a problem. But like that's why it's super important to try to figure out how to break those stigmas. And I think outside of children's movies, I think the curriculums in general for like education need to be altered because yeah, if a parent is super controlling and filtering out what a child is learning, schools should be able to compensate for that, you know? Like we were talking
Yeah.
about before, like sex education. It's so widely taught very differently in this world. Not in this yeah, in this world. And like even in our country, like it goes from abstinence to like how to have safe sex. Like that's like the range of where the curriculums are across the nation. And it's because it's so stigmatized in our society that no one wants to talk about it, but like we need to talk about the different things. Like but we should also talk about them and not in a hateful way. So yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
some people who believe abstinence is the right way to approach having sex. And there's some people thinking, "Oh, you should try having casual sex so you figure out what you want in a life partner or whatever, or what you want to do for pleasure." Like, yes, we should accept both sides are there and people are coming from a certain background understanding these types of things, but we should expose it to children saying these are all the things that are
Mm-hmm.
being taught. These are all the things that different people are thinking so that they can understand that empathy of understanding like, hey, there are people who think like this and it's okay that they think like this. It's just that it's because or like, understand where they're coming from and be able to have those tough conversations and discussing these types of stigmatized topics rather than just sheltering them until they grow up, and when they grow up they don't really want to have these conversations because they think that's it's right, like the sky is blue and the grass is green. Like I've
Yeah.
taught that when I
Yeah.
was younger, why would I change that now? So I think that's my take on parents who censor like these difficult topics that are seen in children's movies.
I think that no, honestly, you brought up some good points because like I think even like for sex education too, I don't think it's openly hateful. I think it's just a taboo. Like people don't want to talk about it. Like they're almost scared to. They're like, oh, it's icky. Like I have a very distinct memory of me in high school or middle school, or whenever I took it, of our health education, and the teacher that I had was giggling through explaining what a period is. I'm like, why are we giggling? Just like we like
It's like
just
nature.
talk about it. Yeah. Like why are we like just giggling through, talking about like condoms and like all this. I was like, you're the teacher. Why are you embarrassed to talk about these kind of things? Like why are you not trained? Why are we not just accepting it as like a normal conversation to have and normal questions to ask? Because I feel like as you normalize it, you also like avoid having to deal with like, like, okay, for example, like if you have like an STD or something, I feel like you can catch that earlier because you're not too embarrassed to ask or too embarrassed
Right.
to say
Exactly.
something. Like, like those kind of stuff will get it's not going to be a taboo topic, and it's not going to be something that people are scared to talk about, so they can get the help that they need at the right time. You know what I mean? Like, instead of
Right.
making it worse.
They're not taught that it's a taboo. They're taught that this is something that can happen and I need to be aware of it. Like,
Yeah.
speaking of sex, I don't know why we're going down the sex route for this, but
No, I'm down. I'm here.
well, speaking of sex, I remember the sex. You know how every kid has like a couple of talks with their
Uh-huh,
parents,
uh-huh.
and one of them is the sex talk. And
I
it
didn't get
doesn't
that,
matter if
but
you're in a South
yes.
Asian community or not, but I really remember that the sex talk that I had with my parents were like, Kirthi, you're a girl, so one decision can change your life forever. And I absolutely hated that because it was suppressing a specific side, and it was automatically trying to tell you like it's all on you, like as a girl. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this is society's way of like talking. This is not actually like, this is not a safe way to approach these types of topics, because it might not be end all be all if you do get pregnant before you were supposed to be in society, but like the way that the conversations are approached is like that fuels other problems. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
telling the girl that, hey, having sex, unprotected sex, can change your life, like it now that shows other problems like toxic masculinity and like other things like boys will be boys. These are the conversations that stems out of these types of conversations of like filtering or silencing out different types of views. So I that's what I'm like, I don't know where I was going with this, but like I think that conversation, I just thought of that when you were talking about it, just because these are the types of things that we were kind of growing up with, and we never had like on-screen representation have people
Mm-hmm.
question, is this the right way of discussing with a child? Like, no one questioned that because it wasn't normalized on screen, like until like
Yeah, like,
nowadays we have sex education. Like, that show talks about so many important topics about sex that people are like, oh wait, we should start talking about these with kids, or not kids, teens, and kind of make them aware, educated of what's all out there, rather than those preconceived notions that
yeah.
everybody kind of thinks about of certain topics.
Yeah, no, sex and sexuality, what do you, like, your likes, dislikes, hates, like, I think sex education did such a good job about showing the representation and just the scale and the varieties of, like, sex and sexuality. And I thought they did such a great job because they never came at it with judgment, you know? I feel like
Hmm.
some TV shows, like, they always come at it with judgment. I think something that just came to mind as well, like, we were talking about Pretty Little Liars and all these ABC Family shows that we grew up on, right? I remember it was a very common thing for, like, characters on screen to be, like, especially women characters on screen, to be sad that they haven't lost their virginity yet and they're only 16.
Right,
That
right,
hurts. I'm like, okay, okay. They're literally got their period like 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, but we're treating them like they're like 30 or we're treating them like so
right.
much older, and it's like,
Hmm.
it makes me angry because growing up watching that, I was like, you should have had your first kiss in middle school. You should have had sex by the time you hit high school. Like, these are the kind of stigmas. It's like, no, this is not real life. This is a lie. This is a lie. I don't know why I didn't, like, come up with that solution already when I saw 25-year-olds playing 14-year-olds, but like, it's not
Yeah.
something you think about when you're in middle school. In middle school, you watch something and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, this is life. This is how high school is, sure. And it really sucks that that was like the only representation, like the only, I guess, like, exposure that we had, or one of the only exposures that we had to topics like that. And then now seeing, and I was gonna also make the point, it's kind of funny that, like, sex education and, like, Big Mouth even, or, like, these kind of shows that talk about sex whatever. Um, it's it's funny because I think it's a lot of older writers that are now in their 40s and 50s who are trying to reconcile with their own upbringing and their own way of, they are trying to teach us what they didn't have when they were younger. And I thought that was cool that they're doing that now. There's a whole slew of people, and I mean, same with the generational trauma. All these writers who are now 40, 50, and in first generation 20, 30 years ago who are now writing these movies and TV shows for kids, saying that, hey, you should probably like forgive your elders, forgive their mistakes, they're humans as well. You know, like that topic and theme is coming through because they're reconciling it with like themselves, which I thought that was kind of interesting. So I don't know, it's cool.
That's
It's
a
exciting.
great transition, Sneha, to the next question. We can read each other's minds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're at that point now.
Um, yeah, it's like season three. That's a progression.
Right.
Anyways, the next question is about, let's flip it. Like, we parents are filtering what children see and how that affects adult life. But let's flip it. In adult life, the being able to have an inner child, I feel like, is not that acceptable as an adult. Like, it seemed as like you're immature, but in my opinion, having an inner child is powerful. Like, that's what, personally for me, my inner child motivates me to continue to learn new things or be accepting the fact that, yeah, I'm gonna fuck up, but it's okay that you fuck up because everybody's growing. Like, I think those are like powerful things that an inner child can give you. And personally for me, that I see that through looking at children's movies now for me as an adult. And so I guess, how do you see your inner child kind of affecting you and the power of having that in like a society where everybody has to grow up really quickly or fast?
So, as someone who is perpetually 2 years behind everyone else, just in everything for some reason, just everything just goes slowly for me. It's fine. I'm getting there. It's the learning curve is there. It's just very like gradual. Um, I don't know. Like I feel like I've always been in touch with my inner child. It's actually been something that I've had to kind of deal with, like as I get older and move away from my hometown and like all that stuff. Like being able to balance that out with the older version of me, the one that has insightful thoughts and can act like an adult, like trying to find a balance between the two, because I think I toggle between the two very like binary, like it's just one or zero. Like I'm trying to find a happy balance between the two. That's something I've just been working on, because I do tend to kind of get too serious when people are trying to be silly, and
I
then I
feel that.
get too silly when other people are trying to be serious. So, that just comes with like my other issues, which is just not being able to read social cues and taking everything literally. But in terms of like in terms of like movies and TV shows and stuff, I think like my inner child really does come out, and that's why I really do like enjoy like following along to like stories and like stuff like that, especially when it's targeted towards children, because like like I think it brings me back to when I was like sitting in the corner of my room in the sunlight like a cat reading Harry Potter, and like just looking up and it's 3 hours later and I'm still like so involved with the book I just lost track of time. Like it brings me back to that, and I think it's so healthy. Like it's so underrated, that I wish more people would appreciate that side of them, and hold on to that side of them, because I'm struggling to keep a hold of it sometimes, especially when things get too serious. And I don't know, like I wish more people would understand that that's a good fallback to have. And movies and TV shows and kids stuff, which I don't think animation is actually kids stuff, but that's another story. But like it's nice. It's nice to have. It's nice to kind of bring that out of you, and the fact that something on screen has the power to do that is really great. So I don't know.
Right. No, right. Like, I think the same way too. I think for me, it's healing. Like you said,
Mhm.
it's healthy, it's
Yeah.
healing. I feel like you say, you get transported back to when you were a kid at those times when you watch movies like Turning Red or like Spin, and like these types of like movies that you can connect with, because it, like you said before, it's older writers healing themselves by writing content that they wish they could have saw when they were a kid. It's
Mhm.
literally inner child, like, laid out in a situation. And it, like, in a perspective of an adult, like, it helps you kind of process through those difficult situations or open wounds that you might have in specific childhood memories that, like, you can heal with, you can grow with. And it's so powerful when movies can like do that for you. I remember like watching Turning Red and understanding the relationship between the mom and the character, like the main
Mm-hmm.
character, like how it developed, because I could definitely resonate with that. With my parents, and being able to see like her come to terms and that happy ending that kids have, and it was a very realistic happy ending, like that helped me heal and be like, okay, this is like, it let me reflect on, as a child I thought like this for our relationship, but now looking
Mm-hmm.
back at it with a new perspective being seen, how can I heal from that? And I think that is super important because, like you said, like life is shit. Like, I'm gonna be honest here, like the
Yeah,
world
adulthood is not
sucks.
great, man. Mm-mm.
Yeah, and
Not.
that inner child is like a break, or like just that grasp that you need sometimes when things get really tough. And I feel like people, we should embrace it more than be like, "Oh, you're acting so immature." Like, no, like embrace it. Like, we only live on this earth for so long. Why do you have to judge everything that we do? But like, anyways,
You're right.
that's a different tangent for another day. But yeah, that's my take on inner child.
No, no, I agree. And it's kind of, I guess it's kind of like ironic because I think a lot of our podcast does kind of highlight this more serious side of ourselves. And it's like, we're telling you right now, we are cool people, all right? We are very silly people. Like, we can, like,
Yeah,
I don't
once you
know. I
open
mean,
that door, like once you open that door, it's so much fun. Like Fun Keerthi
like,
is there. You just need to like open, like find the key to the lock and
oh
unlock
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. You just gotta know like which one is going to open the box and let it all free, which is great. I guess going on to our last topic of today. Um, what are some of your hopes and dreams for
Oh shit.
where the well, let me finish. It's not that deep, I promise.
Okay.
What are your hopes and dreams for the future of like cultural representation within the world of children consumption?
My hopes and dreams.
Your hopes and dreams. Tell me everything.
Well, looking towards the future, I'm hopeful, pun intended. Um,
Mm-hmm. Is
so
that a
I
pun?
honestly, is it a pun intended? I don't know, but I'm
Yeah, it's
hopeful.
okay.
I
Uh-huh.
don't know. I'm hopeful just because I feel like it's getting, like the conversations that are getting better in terms of how we approach children's movies and how people are understanding that that development is needed for a more
Mm-hmm.
like nicer, kinder adult type of interactions. So in that sense, I'm really hopeful. And one thing I am curious about, I kind of think about this like randomly sometimes after I watch a children's movie or animation movie. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think about if we're tackling these types of concepts now for kids, what types of conversations will I have with my kids? Because, like, and will I be able to answer them? That's what I think about sometimes. Because I'm
Mm.
like, we're tackling all the really tough conversations now, and children are like, sometimes I talk to like 6 or 7 year olds or 4 or 5 year olds, like, I'm just blown away by like what they think about on their free time. Like when my cousin was younger, he's such a cutie. He I asked him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I just asked that because a child's view on that type of thing is so innocent, and he was like, it was so cute. He was like, "I want to be a baseball player, a professional baseball
Oh.
player." But I don't know if my career if that's a good career choice because nowadays we need a lot of money to live happily, and you don't get a good
Oh.
401k if you go into baseball. So I think I should do a corporate job because I'll be able to buy all the materialistic things for myself and my parents. And I was like, this dude is 6 and he's already thinking about his 401k. Like,
I'm sorry. What?
yeah, I was just like, oh dear. I was like, I was shocked. I didn't know how to respond. I was like, dude, you're already thinking about your 401k before I am. Like, this is
Yeah, like
insane.
my HR literally emailed me the other day. It was like, "Do you want to sign up for a 401k?" I'm like, "No, I'm okay. I'm good. Pass." Sorry, that's probably not great financially, but pass. um, no, yeah, I don't know. Like speaking of like weird conversations, like that's a good point that you bring because like kids really do, like I think I was having this conversation with my parents actually. We were talking about like crazy things that me and Shreya have asked when we were really young and they just didn't know how to answer you know?
Mhm.
And I think it started up like I think I said when I was like 6 or 7, I was sitting at the counter and I just look over at my mom and I'm like, "Where do you go when you die?" And just she just didn't know how to answer at all, and I think I just started crying and they didn't know what to do about it.
Oh,
So that's cool. But like, if kids were if we were asking questions like that when we were younger, like what are the next questions? Like, are they gonna watch Soul? Like, are they watching Soul right now and thinking like, what is the meaning of life? Like, where do we go? Is there an afterlife? You know, like, are they thinking along those lines? Are they asking these questions to their parents? Like, how do you, as a parent, respond to stuff like that and have a mature conversation with a 6-year-old? I don't
right?
know.
Like it makes me just wonder, like, what are my kids gonna ask me if I'm already thinking like this at 22, and the things that I thought about when I was like 6 or 7?
Mm-mm.
What is that next level? But at the same time, I'm like happy that that's an issue that we're going to
Yeah.
have to deal with, because that just proves like not every family can have those types of thoughts. You know what I mean? Like we
No.
were blessed to have be able to like not think about survival and think about enlightenment or self-discovery or think about ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
it just shows how successful like our growth is between generations or throughout the family, that we're able to think about these types of things. So it makes me happy that this is the problem that we will have to face. And I'm hoping in the sense that like it's a more like, I feel like kids are growing up like in all different backgrounds or growing up similarly in to an essence, just the way that technology is. So it's like being able to like have more smarter, mature conversations and not like undermine a kid's ability to think wisely or be mature,
Mm-hmm.
or and
Mm-hmm.
like being able to approach that. I think that's hopeful because that determines a lot in the adult life. And like whether or not people low key may see our podcast episode and be like, why are they talking about children's movies? Like, how does this relate? But like, it really does. It's when you talk like when you look at children like as a child, like your those perspectives are being molded for like long term. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like learning a language. It's hard to learn something when you're older because you have a lot of other things that get involved, like ego, pride, like society's effect on what it means to be successful, like things like that that are going to be thrown at you or checked at you. So it's like it's really important to
It's
see
it's
that.
literally it's literally shaping the way that the next generation is going to think, like in a
Hmm.
lot of ways. So it's so important that we do put out representation. That's why it takes me off when people are trying to censor these sort of content and censor the diversity and censor the like the topics that are being discussed. Like I hope that people still that kids are still being able to like consume that content because like you said, it increases their empathy, it increases their awareness of self, it pushes them to be more curious about the world and ask questions and not just accept things for what they are. And I think that's so important. That's the kind of like it starts there, right? Like that's why education is so important to begin with. And while we're talking about education, why can't movies and TV shows that are more accessible arguably than education right now, like that should also be able to teach something to the next generation, even if it's something as small as just understanding a culture that's not known, to
Right,
explore
exactly.
something that's not within the visible reach. And I like it's just such a it's so important, and people don't realize it's all the kids, man. It's all with the kids. It's about the
It's
kids.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that parents like filter out or like try to be like, you can't
Mm-hmm.
talk about that around my kid, like especially like what like sexuality, like that should be
Mm-hmm.
introduced at a younger age in my opinion, but some parents are like, we don't even want them thinking about that at the age of 7. But anyways, like parents censoring, like it's kind of ironic because I'm sure every parent wants their kid to be happy, and they are themselves are the blockers for those kids in
Right,
order to
right.
be happy. For some kids, like it's ironic, and I feel like it's a form of love, I guess, to protect your child from the world, but there's power in exposing them safely to different topics. Like this just came to my head now, like in the South Asian community, drinking, sex
Mm-hmm.
education, things like these are not talked about at our age. They're very much like silenced or tabooed when you're like in high school, and then kids go to college and their first like just their first slice of freedom, people go off the rails. You hear stories of people doing random shit like in college, their first year of
Mm-hmm.
college, and making these really bad mistakes, all because they weren't safely exposed to those types of concepts. Like simple as how to drink properly, like have a good meal before, don't drink on an empty stomach. These types of things, like they're important for a kid to know because if they're once they become adults, it's guaranteed they're gonna try it. No one's
Yeah,
stopping them. They're
yeah.
obviously going to try it. So just ensure them that they're like equipped with the necessary tools to do it safely or do it right or not make a mistake that they're going to regret. And I think like personally from my parents have very much been like that. Like we're going to talk about everything so that like when you get to a situation you're educated enough to make a decision for yourself. And I very much believe that's what the parents silencing, especially like in our community on like taboo
Mm-hmm.
topics, is restricting kids from doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that just comes from like fear and ignorance as well. Like I think some parents, especially within our community, are like it's I think when it comes to certain topics it's very like one or zero sort of thing, like, oh, that if you do it once you're done, you're bad. And that's just the kind of inadvertently that's the fear that they have held and are now passing on to us and the next generation. And I think like I understand that fear, but at the same time we as a community need to start moving past it and start opening some of these boxes and being like, it's okay though, like let's let's talk about it. Like, let's talk about it and come to a happy medium, and let's understand that yes, it's something that neither party knows a lot about, but we can work through it together and
Hmm.
understand both sides. And I don't know, and I hope maybe that's the biggest hope or takeaway we're trying to get at. Like, we just want
Right.
reconciliation. We want like people in the next generation to feel a little more comfortable talking about these topics and being aware of these things.
Right. And breaking that cycle, like
Mm-hmm.
use children's movies as a tool to facilitate that.
Mm-hmm.
Like these
Mm-hmm.
these topics are being highlighted in on screen, so why don't we use that as like the conversation starter? It doesn't even have to be like if the movie is supposedly meant for 6-year-olds, why not have this conversation with your like teen age kid or even adult kid? Like you still try maybe watching it together and like will help you facilitate those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Like that short movie Bow is about intergenerational trauma, and so like watching that as an adult, you'll be able to have those mature conversations or those open conversations that are needed to break that cycle of hey, like, let's not talk about it so we don't make a mistake, or hey, let's like not address the problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, so with that, we're gonna end the episode. Thank you all for who stuck till the end. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we kind of just hit record and started talking. So hopefully you enjoyed the pace, the flow of the episode, and enjoyed learning our views on children's movies. So yeah, with that, we hope you all stay safe, stay happy, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Bye.
So before you kind of leave us today, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Ravi Ray Audio. You might have heard that our intro and outro music is a little bit different this season and is definitely upgraded to a next level. That's all thanks to Ravi Ray, who was our last guest in season 2, and he agreed to help us out with our music for season 3. So thank you so much, Ravi Ray, for all your help. And if you guys want to get in contact with him to collaborate with any projects or work with Ravi Ray Audio, we are linking his information to the episode description so you can reach out to him or see all the other projects he's done. And thanks again, Ravi, and we'll see you guys all in the next one.